we want to introduce ourselves. So first you want to know who we are. This is Vincent de Boer.
And this is Guido de Boer. Obviously, we are brothers. And today we would like to invite you to our universe of making letters by hand.
Okay. Well, obviously you can tell that we are brothers.
Oh. Dat werkt niet? Ja? Die werkt niet.
This is us. A lot of people always think that we are twins, but we are not twins. We're actually two of triplets, so we have a third brother.
And we also have a sister that's slightly older, as you can see on the picture.
She was super proud of her brothers, maybe still. But this is us a few years ago, and now we're here. We're super happy to be here. Thank you for the invite at Tretjakov Gallery. And for today we prepared a presentation of a lot of different movies, which shows, I hope, a lot about our process.
Also, we are part of a collective, and that's called High on Type. I think that was mentioned already in our introduction. I'm left-handed, by the way, as you can see. And High on Type is not only the two of us. We were the initiators of High on Type, but we are doing this with a group of people. Here you see the rest of the team. And as already was introduced, we were here a few months ago during Typomania with the four of us. The second one on the picture is Jülьen from Paris. He wasn't there by that time.
But that's also something you're going to notice in our presentation. Not everybody of our collective is writing letters by hand. Some of them are type designers, some of them are graphic designers. But we too are like very working by hand always. So that makes this presentation is going to be about that. So first we want to show a video about Vincent's work.
Yeah, and the video is quite old. It's already 3 or 4 years later now, but it perfectly shows how I make my letters and how the hand and the movement of how I handle the brush is very important in the process.
What's actually funny about this video, Vincent sent it to me, and I thought like, but who filmed this? And he said like, yeah, I used my right hand to film it. He's crazy. Well, as you can see, Vincent is very concentrated and works on like more as an artist. The to explain a little bit about what I do. I'm more of a graphic designer, so I still make letters by hand in, I hope, an like an experimental way, but mostly in a situation where I do have clients. So I have 2 videos of my work on the streets. And another one. That's what graphic design is for, to see it in 1 second, right? Okay.
Very often we get the question, how do you do it? And we will talk a little bit about the working methods on making letters, writing them and drawing them. And later we will also tell you about our principles and why we do it like this. And next up, I will show you a video that I recently made for a very recent project. I'm still busy with this project of making a lot of album covers for a jazz band from London. And they did 7 albums in 2 years, so they're very productive. And I try to follow up with making all these the artworks, the front side and the back side, and this short video will tell you a little bit about how that is going. So this is very recent. I made the video about a month ago, and I will talk very shortly on the rest of the album covers that I did. And what I find important to mention is that I come from a typography and graphic design background, but I use the methods that I use for letter making, I use also to illustrate drawings and make abstract images. So as you can see on this picture, there is an abstract drawing which represents the music of the jazz band, and from that I try to extract the letters and the shapes of the letters, working with the same methods, with the same tools, and with the same paper and ink. And from that I shift towards the backside of the album cover, which is, for me, as a person that is very interested in music, the record sleeve front side is as important as the back side, because the back side usually has all the letters on it, and I come from the letter world, so the letters are very important to me. As for most of the people, the front side of the album cover is the most important one, because that's the one that is that's always out there and you see first in the shops. So this is a very challenging way of approaching the project of making album covers, and turns out that they are very productive. So I made, this is record 2, and that's record 3 already, and this has just been released, record 4, and 5, 6, and 7 are on the way, as you can see. So it is very interesting for me to see every once in a while, when I have to produce this album cover, I have to listen to the music and try to understand what it means for the visuals of the project. So I have to stay close to what the project is doing, which direction they are going, and what I can do is just to play along. But I don't play with the musical instrument, I play with the brush, obviously. And I also made a little video on my sketchbook where I try the letters that are in the mind, and I might use or might not use them for the back sides of the album cover. So these are all tests, and as you can imagine, sometimes there is something in the sketchbook which I can only use a year later or 2 years later, so I have to be very careful with archiving everything. And from there, obviously, they go to the drawing table. Some things are sketched out at first with the pencil, and sometimes I just directly start with ink on the paper. And as for the record covers for album 5 and 6, I did some pencil drawings in the sketchbook to save some time, because if I had to do this all by ink at first, then I would never be able to finish in time. And some more sketches, as you can see. Like some already look like the actual pictures. And this is how it looks in the studio. And this is the album that I was, the 2 albums that I was making on the video I just shown. So it's record 5 and record 6. And it's a very intense record, so I had to represent this in the shapes that I use. And also for the back sides, where the letters for me need to represent the same feeling of the front side, and so the music. A little note, if you look close, it's kind of readable, understandable, but from a distance it looks like it's not. The last album cover I would like to show you is the one for the Christmas album.
Can you maybe read them out loud? The previous one?
The previous ones. Yeah. Well, I will start with this one. It says Gunning, Ward, Waterfall, Amber. Well, this is all the credits with all the artists on. I didn't. One single leaf, Predator, and Percolator. And this is the barcode. But it's to me the record cover is in that sense is very special because I am a letter maker and a letter artist. But on the backside of a record cover, there's not much text, and you're also not. It's not very important if you can read it or not. Especially nowadays, when I see the record cover more as an art piece that you want to collect and you want to put in the room instead of as how it used to be, like years ago, where it was an informational piece. Well, this is how it looks in the studio, and this I just finished yesterday because the jazz band just recorded a Christmas album, and I wasn't expecting that, so I had to make letters according to the music as well. That they kind of belong together. And my idea for this, I told earlier about the front side of a record and the back side of a record, and I wanted to represent the creepy Scrooge kind of Tim Burton feeling, creepy Christmas on the front side, and then on the back side a very elegant, cliche, decorative Christmas piece. So I had to push myself to go back into a more traditional way of doing calligraphy, and I really like that from time to time, but it's very difficult. So I took the cliche of Christmas, the decorative feeling of Christmas, and I morphed it into a way of showcasing representing the music.
Kan je misschien iets meer vertellen over hoe je begonnen bent, iets proces over dit? Nee, doe maar.
Gvida asked me to tell a little bit more about the process of specifically this album cover, and it's well, now that I think I didn't prepare to talk about this, but it's a very how it usually goes is they send me the music and then I listen to the music for 10 times straight, back to back, and then I just start sketching. And obviously for a Christmas drawing or a Christmas writing, there is a lot of history in this tradition of making Christmas music, and most of it is horrible, in my opinion. So I was very afraid of touching the subject Christmas. So that's why I tried to show two sides of the story. So you have the creepy one, the Christmas that goes under the skin, the unpleasant moments maybe at the dinner table with your family, and then there's also the elegant, like the way how it should be, and it should be this, it should be that, and it should be very pleasant and pleasing for the eye. And that's why I thought of all these curly shapes that are in my mind while I make the creepy stuff. I think of it, but I never do it anymore. And then I thought, like, this is that exact moment where I try to, I use that as a tool. Is that an answer?
Yeah, that's a good answer. Thank you, Vincent. Well, I made a video about the way I work at my studio. Oh, sorry. And basically, my story comes down to this pile of books. I finish one in 2 months. So that's like 50 drawings a month. And still have to do my 2 drawings today. And I just want to show you, and later on I will tell you something about some specific projects. So there's a lot of different stuff in my sketchbook. Sometimes I'm just filling the pages. Sometimes it's testing A lot of times it's for clients. For instance, this one I made for a venue in Amsterdam. There was a sketch for a wall painting. And I do sketches for exhibitions. Basically everything is in my sketchbook. And the nice thing about these sketchbooks is that of course it's in chronological order. And because I really want to fill up all those books, it keeps me at pace. So years before, I think like 5 years ago, I was always thinking about, it's all about quality, but I'm changing a little bit, I'm shifting a little bit to a different opinion. I think quantity and just doing it all the time, every day, every minute almost, makes me that I surprise myself and that I make stuff I would never think of doing. So when you're not having any idea, but there's still a white page in front of you, this is me learning Russian, Cyrillic alphabets, really makes you to invent new ways of writing or new ways of making letters, and sometimes a mistake or something you're very bored of just gives you that surprisingly new discovery. Or a lot of times I'm designing games, for instance, like small drawing games. So for instance, I'm telling myself only to work with black and white a lot of times, but sometimes I want to make letters in the white space of the black letters, and then I invent the idea of the game, and then I have to do it. So this says, Mom, look. I made this for a tattoo shop. A new book. Oh no, that one is boring. And this next few sketches I want to show you is about, not this one. This is about an assignment I'm having. Every year I'm doing a poster campaign for Amsterdam Dance Event. And actually I think this part of my process says a lot about that my sketch is actually almost all the time almost the same as the end result. So that's also what I tell my clients. There's not much in between of a sketch and a result. And sometimes they really get annoyed by this, because then I'm saying, no, it's just how it is. So I'm going to my drawer and show you the actual, it's stuck. Actual pieces. So this is one of the end results I made for the campaign. And maybe we can see again. Yeah. This was the sketch. So it is basically already the end result. And I think that says a lot about the spontaneous act of drawing and writing. I'm going to talk more about that later on. But first I want to show you the posters I did. So this is a series of last year, or of this year, 2018. And I made 3 posters with different artists on it. I actually like this one the most because it's white on black. I love the contrast. And the previous years I did some other stuff, but also made by hand. So for instance, this one, they asked me to do a poster campaign, and they showed me this amount of artists, and I told them, like, this is not an amount of artists you can put on a regular poster, because normal people see a poster on the street like we all saw in the movie before. Normally, when you're on the bike or in the metro, you skip by the poster for like 2 seconds or maybe even less. So I said to them, like, maybe it's not a good idea to put all the artists of the festival on the poster, because nobody will read anything. So they said, no, we still want to do it. So then I came up with another idea. I wanted to divide all the artists by the different days. So on Thursday there's a different artist, and Friday, and so on. So I made 5 posters instead of 1, and this poster is about the Saturday. So the artists on the Saturday are a little bit bigger and pushing away the artists on the other days to the top. So this you will probably not read anymore, these ones. But still, you get the idea. I think the audience and the people on the streets, they get the idea of, okay, this poster is about Saturday, and the other days there's also stuff going on. So also for the other days. And actually, I morphed these 5 posters into an animation of, I think, like 80 hand-drawn frames. So there was a lot of work. But I still loved the outcome. And I also loved that the client was going on with me in this idea and put 5 different posters on the street instead of only the one with all the artists on the overview poster. And some more posters I did. So, shall I tell them also about the other Melkweg posters, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I made a video of the other posters as well. So new book. Yeah, this book. Can I pause the thing? No. Oh. Kun jij dat ontdoen? Okay. So this, yeah, thanks. This first page is about me getting an idea and the client giving me some information. So what I usually do is I start with a simple sketch like this, and they wanted me to put the title of the song on the poster. Yeah. Okay. And then I said to them, no, I only want 2 words on the poster, good times, because that's what it's all about. The poster is about giving people a good time. If you come to the party or the festival, whatever, it's going to be a good time. But, of course, they didn't want that. So I had to make new versions. Dat is maar lopen. And of course, I had to fit in all the artists on the poster. So I was just trying to see how many artists there are in a like on one sheet. So this was the first serious sketch. I showed it to the client, and they said, yeah, but still, the artist and the title, they're like mingled into each other, so nobody will like have any clue about what's going on at the party on this poster. So I had to draw another version. And at that time, I think that was funny because not all my clients immediately get that I'm only working by hand. So if one artist or one date or one thing is changing in the poster, I have to redraw the whole thing. So that's going to take me like another 2 or, well, in this case, maybe even more hours. So 2 more versions. And then, of course, I had to put dates in there as well. Oh, some other project in between, yeah. So this was actually... Ja, laat maar lopen. This was actually the poster but with some dates missing still, because I drew also all the type for the dates as well. So I will show. Oh ja, als je hem even los doet. And then, sorry, this is the end result. So as you can see here, I also made all the type for this by hand. Another one. Okay, next chapter.
Well, something about the work that we're doing. Well, I don't really work in a commission sense. I sometimes take on commissions, but I usually prefer the situation where I make a piece and then afterwards I sell it. And because of I have a strong connection with letter making still, as I explained you earlier, I would love to show you a few free alphabets that I did. And it says something about, well, actually to me, writing the alphabet could be an act of meditation. It could also be trying to achieve an art piece instead of only letters or letters as tools to communicate. To me, the alphabet can be an art piece as well if you compose it in a certain way. And this is what I like to expose now, and I have a few more examples. Some are totally illegible, but for me it says a lot about how I made the step from letter making to art making. So here yet another alphabet all the way down to Z, and this one is slightly more legible, very much inspired by the old wood types that I recently bought a book of, and I think this is about a year ago, and it's a very repetitive act of doing. So in that sense, what I mentioned earlier, it can also be a very meditative act, and as you can imagine, it takes a lot of time, and it's a very time-consuming act, and I prefer to do this in a long period of time. So I can't really do like Gvidо does 1 or 2 hours a day. No, I have to make at least 6 or 7 or preferably more than 8 hours in a row, and maybe one little break, but it needs to be all done in with one hand, with one concentration, with one motivation, and with one ID. And if you would go to the studio on another day, you have a different hand. So and that makes it very personal to me. So that's why I prefer to work in long periods of time. And this is a more expressive way of writing. And from here, I can easily make the step to making drawings or abstract images. Not all the whole image is on the screen. You can imagine there's also a bottom. But this showcases how I use the calligraphy tools, I use the calligraphy materials and the calligraphy movements and traditions to make abstract images, and I try to obtain a certain vision that is floating around in the mind, and I try to put it on paper. And sometimes I directly hit, and then it's the first drawing is the best drawing, and sometimes it goes over time. So I need more days or more attempts to go there. But one drawing is, let's say, preferably finished within 1 day or at least within the same week. But sometimes it's so extremely time-consuming that I need more time, and yeah, this is a challenge for me. Another image from the same series. They're quite large. I think like this. And to me, this specific series, the previous one and this one, it is to invite the audience into my world. So it's a very imaginary way of taking people into the paper. So you can, it kind of feels like you can go directly into the paper. And this is what my topic is. Since it's very, like it looks like three-dimensional, I try to make as much depth on a flat piece of paper as possible with only one tool and one type of ink. Last one in the series. It's very, this was a very challenging one, and this is an example where I needed 12 attempts to finalize with this drawing. And all the other 11, I was very much not happy with it. So I had to go over and over again, and it kind of hunts you down. So you have to go to the studio again, and you have to try it again. And it's a very disciplined process and working method. Until the moment where you're satisfied and you can bring it to the art gallery or the museum or whatsoever. I exhibited this. This one is actually in the museum at the very moment in the Netherlands, and it has been on show for a few times already, and I think this will be the last time that I show it, and then I will bring it back to my studio. And then Gvidо would like to tell something about his work.
So I showed you a little bit about my books, what's important in my process. So then you I hope you are curious about what kind of things comes out of these sketchbooks. So I think this is a good example of a project which started at the very moment where I was calling with the client, and he asked me to design fabric for like a suit, and I was just, while I was calling, I was just doodling on the paper, and then all of a sudden this pattern appeared, and it was like a calligraphic pattern from different sides, because I was turning the page and I was walking around and putting a letter on it or a stroke or whatever. And then when he hung up, then I looked at my desk and I saw the piece of paper, and I thought like, well, actually this is maybe already a good design for the thing. So I sketched it, worked it out a little bit, and that was exactly what I gave the client. So sometimes this spontaneous act of handwriting is a really good advantage in matter of time. So where Vincent, for instance, is struggling with time, this handwriting stuff gives me sometimes like a good tempo, but also sometimes not, because sometimes your hand is not working or you're not in the right mood or whatever. Here you'll see another pattern I designed for the same client. Yeah, I really like this kind of working, and how this pattern came out on the fabric. But it's not always like that. Sometimes I do collaborative projects. So, for instance, I designed together with an exhibition designer. I designed the exhibition in the garden of the National Glass Museum in the Netherlands, and he designed all the objects, and I did all the letters. So normally, where you have like small text on the side of the works in a museum or a gallery, that specific text was blown up by me and put on the glass houses in the garden. So this is an outtake of a big text. This is actually the title of the faces. So this says in mirrored script, of course, because I had to do it from the inside. Dip face, that was the the title of the work. And I really love to work for clients, but sometimes it's also freeing your mind if you're working in an uncommissioned situation. So this work I made for an exhibition in Rotterdam in the Kunsthal Museum. And actually Vincent was there as well, by the way, but you cannot see it in this picture. And I think what I like to tell about this particular work is that working with text and letters is at the same time easy as difficult, because easy, there's always some specific forms you can draw, because you can think of an A and then draw one. But the difficult part about uncommissioned working with text is that you have to use text. So sometimes I'm just out of words and I'm like, what shall I write? And for this work, the curator of the exhibition gave me a list of almost 400 onomatopoeia. So that is like the words you read in comic books when somebody is giving a punch to another one that says slam or boom or splash, and all those kind of words I put on the wall. So it's like 400 of them. And yeah, so that's basically the story about this work. And some other piece I did in 2 years ago for a museum in Belgium. I did a very short residency. And this actually was, for me personally, a really big victory on the game I told you about, the black and white game. So I worked on this idea for, I think, already like 7 years, that I wanted to have white letters in between of the black letters at the same time, with only drawing the black space, but in the same time also drawing the white space without touching it. So they gave me this wall and I put it on there, and I hope you can read it. It's actually 2 words combined into each other. So the upper part says accept. So if you do this with your hand and you cover the bottom part, then you can see accept. And if you do the same trick upside down, if you cover the top part, it says in white text, it says protest. I hope you can read it. Well, actually, that's the whole idea. So a conclusion about what I do is I work with text, but in the same time, the text is also an image.
Well, the why question is obviously the most important question, and there's a few things that makes it very essential for us, the both of us as brothers, to work by hand instead of using the computer in the world where the computer is most used for making letters and for using letters and for seeing letters nowadays as well. So it is it's very important to ask this question. It's also important to every day try to answer the question. Although every day you might get a different answer, we try to answer this question today by using a few examples. First part is very personal to me, is expression. I think the part of a human being needs to express him or herself at some point, and some do that without instruments, without tools. Some do it with tools or instruments, some do it with music, some does it with visuals. I do it with the brush. And I feel a very strong connection between what I want to express and how it comes out of the body with my left hand. Unfortunately, the left hand, not the right hand, but this is how it was given to me. And for me, it's very important to extend my body with this brush. And I feel that I can express myself way better if I use the brush. And the only thing I need for it is three things. I need the surface, I need the brush, and I need ink. And it's that essential to me. And I see that, well, often people ask me, like, but I can do that with the computer as well. That's perfect. That's fine. But that's not how it works for me. And I see a very, very, very large value of my body and the hand and the directness of not needing any of this, the cables, the machine, something that can go wrong, basically. I see a very strong value and connection with the directness of using tools. And yeah, so expression, that's very important to me.
Well, for me, answering this why question is, I think, very important for me personally in different ways. So, first, I want to, what am I going to show? No, first I want to explain this why question in the situation where I am a teacher. I teach in different art schools and art academies in the Netherlands. And I teach my students, graphic design students, always to draw letters by hand. Because I think, and that's something I strongly believe, is that if you start with drawing letters, it says way more about understanding the construction of them before you go to a computer. So that's the first part of my answer. And second part of my answer is a bit similar to what Vincent was saying just before, because of this movie.
While I had fled one of my thought in me. Blazing, kicking lingo with this gringo who got hot making the pesos in Santo Domingo, El Socio. Used to go to the Acapulcos every weekend.
I asked, this was for an exhibition I did in Belgium. And what I think this part of my answer is that when I'm doing something in my sketchbook, I become my work. And when there's a screen in front of me, it just doesn't work for me the same way, because there's something in between me and what's happening in that machine. So when I'm holding the brush, there's actually nothing in between anymore. So I become my work. And so the really advantage of this, what I feel is that when I do something on a small scale like this, and I want to do it on this wall, like 20 meters long and 6 meters high, then I still can do it because it's in my body. So when I'm like doing this exhibition in Belgium, I just start. So I don't have to sketch. I just grab my brush, or I found out that I had to make my two brushes together because it was too small. As you probably can see from this part, it's actually two brushes. And I can make it as big as I want because it's still the same hand. And I think that is really important for me. Another part, a third part of this answer, this is going to be a long answer, sorry Vincent, is that I think the differences will become bigger as well, in a sense of a lot of people, like mostly everybody, can grab a computer and do like they are graphic designers or type designers or doing whatever on that thing. And I think when you're super skilled or you're training and practicing your skills every day on a piece of paper or on a wall, I think then you will become an expert of doing that. And I think, and that's probably also the reason why we are here today, is that practicing and mastering that particular skill, it gives you a lot of satisfaction personally, but also stands out a lot of other stuff that's out there related to computer stuff. Yeah. Oh, there's no sound here. Yeah, so another big skill, wall painting. I did some with somebody else. I drew these letters in the middle, and he made the ampersand, the black one. Well, I think there's going to be a last slide for Vincent.
Yeah, to conclude the why question, I thought of it, and I might give a different answer every day, every week, every month. But what also is important to me, to specifically, particularly for the handwriting, is that it connects you, all of you, with yourself. And there is something very, very personal about handwriting. And no matter the tool, do you see what I mean? Like, anyone will have a different handwriting with the same tool. And I think, and I strongly believe that personality now in modern day society is something that should not fade. And I see this one of the, handwriting one of the important items in winning this challenge. And so I could only tell this. Someone else would tell something else, but I think this is how I see it at the moment. I think we have one last video.
Yeah.
To thank you all for listening.
Thank you.
Is there any questions?
Все работы, которые вы показывали, это коммерческие работы, и вы получаете за них деньги, да?
But there's a difference also to make a mark, because I hope you all seen some difference between how Vincent is working and how I am working. So I think in my practice I work like 80% commissioned and 20% uncommissioned, and for Vincent it's the other way around, I think.
Yeah, I would say that.
Okay.
Привет. Я хотела спросить, делаете ли вы какую-нибудь обработку на компьютере, чтобы финальную, или вообще никакой не делаете?
I will answer this question. Well, sometimes my clients ask me to make a font out of my handwriting, for instance, a specific, particular kind of style or whatever, and then I say, yeah, I can do it, but I prefer doing every assignment, every poster, logo by hand. But of course, there is like a practical disadvantage of doing everything by hand, because that's also expensive. So sometimes I hire font engineers to make fonts out of my handwriting.
And to add to this question, I think it's also important to understand that at some point we won't be asked by clients that expect anything else than that. So at some point, by persisting on your working methods, the clients that would walk up to us, they would only ask us for the stuff that's in the portfolio. So we also don't get the questions anymore. But we used to have a lot of questions where people would ask for designs, more regular designs that are less personal, but then we had to fight for that a few years, and then once you're through, you're good. But it takes a few years.
I think that's also the reason why the first, let's say, 4 or 5 years after our graduation, we didn't have so much clients, so much work, and also not a lot of money. So that was something that has to grow. So yeah.
Привет. Я хотела спросить, используете ли вы какие-то исторические материалы и чем-то вдохновляетесь, или вы чисто экспериментируете сейчас на данном этапе?
Well, very recently, only yesterday, no, Friday, I made the drawing the writing that I showed you with all the curly letters. And that is very much inspired by Jan van der Velde. You probably know what year he was from?
Oh, 19th century.
19th century
Dutch
calligrapher. And he was very skillful and very much into the decorative pointed pen calligraphy. And I admire his work and I love his work. But I never saw a chance of using the techniques for projects, but now I finally found the reason with the Christmas writing that I did. So I was happy to be inspired by Jan van der Velde. But yeah, it's a very specific question, so a very specific answer.
Скажите, пожалуйста, в обычной жизни вы пользуетесь письмом рукой? Ну, например, записки там на холодильнике кому-то или просто вот письмо другу?
Yeah, but I also have to be honest because, for instance, I'm keeping a digital agenda. So my agenda is not only handwriting anymore. I'm sorry.
That's also because our agendas are in sync with each other. So I know what he's doing and he knows what I'm doing. So it's a very practical matter. But still, we would, speaking for myself, I would prefer an agenda where you can actually turn the page to leave all the past behind. But the practical issue is also important.
But like for instance, talking about me as a teacher in art university, I keep my notes for my students all hand-drawn because when I have to, for instance, remember their names in the beginning of the year, when I write their names on a piece of paper in my book, I always have my small notebook in my pocket. I remember things more easily when I write it down than when I type it down. So there's another really big advantage of making notes by hand. Okay.
Скажите, а вы со студентами пишете непосредственно на занятиях или это преимущественно домашняя работа больше? Ну, письмо дома.
You're a student. Well, I really like the situation where I give my students a chance to work on the, let's say, homework, the assignments in class, because I strongly believe that I'm not only there for teaching the students how it's done. I'm also there to coach them and to tell them something about how you work. And I think also in a presentation we had today, the how part of this presentation was like almost 1/3 of the presentation, and also the why part was 1/3, and the what part, so what are we doing, what kind of projects, is also a small piece of the whole thing. So I want to coach my students in a way where I see the complete process. So if they're consumed education in school and go, hi Guido, okay, what do I have to do? Yeah, okay, and then write everything at home, I do not see what they're doing. So I also do not know what kind of music they're playing while practicing calligraphy. And I can also talk with them. I'd love to talk with my students about what kind of music they're playing while doing calligraphy. If they're playing black metal and the work is rubbish and it's all going everywhere, then there's maybe something you can do about it. So I also want to see how my students are sitting down. And if they're like this, or like, I don't want to do it like this, or this sitting upright, like, okay, and be energized. And so, yeah, so that's a very long answer to your question, but yeah, I really want to see my students work, so also in class, yeah.
Здравствуйте, спасибо большое за лекцию. Скажите, пожалуйста, когда вы поняли, что писать рукой лучше, чем создавать что-то на компьютере, или это вот прям сразу появилось?
I don't know when or how, but I think for me, very young age, because I've been drawing since I was very little. But I might add something to it. I think when I'm still very young, but I say this because of the modern day where we are living in right now. If that would be different, my opinion would be different as well. So I can't really say what is better or what's not better. And when I started drawing, when I was 5 years old, there was no internet yet. So maybe it was, but not at my home. So the moment I realized this, that was a very personal introduction to the matter. It wasn't related yet to the topic which we put on the table just earlier. So how we relate to modern day society and how people perceive images and language.
Добрый день, спасибо большое за интересный рассказ и доверие. Скажите, пожалуйста, а когда вы работаете с клиентом, вашу работу приняли, и дальше процессинг типографический, это шелкотрафаретная печать, это офсет, это цифровая печать. И следите ли вы за процессом печати? Насколько это вам важно? И бывало ли так, что вдруг, боже мой, у меня запороли, мне совсем сделали не так, это не те цвета, что делать, Господи, не остается и часа. Вот были ли такие истории, или все гладко и замечательно, когда вы только сделали, и все пошло, пуш, и все? Спасибо.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of examples where clients do not carefully work with your work, with the done work. And so I think mostly an end result is, I think I prefer the sketch. So, and I'm also more interested in the sketch. So even though I really like to help the client with choosing the right color or the printing process or whatever kind of method they're going to use for reproducing the drawing, I strongly think that that my specialty is in the beginning of the process, where the ideas and the actual act of making and drawing is done. And for instance, I love to screen print as a hobby, but I'm not a really good screen printer, and I'm also not really good in color. So that's why I work in black and white almost all the time. So there's a lot of bad examples of my work. For instance, the poster campaign, like the people who put the posters on the street, they always put it wrong in the frame, and there's a lot of bad examples, but I try to not be too much annoyed by this.
And what I want to add to this question is also, I have recently, I've been asked for a lot of exhibitions where they want to print my works on a different part of the world, and they print my work and exhibit it there. And I usually say no to this because I believe that the tactility of my work is very important. Also, the amount of detail is somehow not yet well done by printers. Like there's very good printers, but for instance, if you would say a digital printer or offset print could be very detailed, but my trust in those particular examples is not very high, so I usually say no. But for instance, I make exceptions. I was asked for an exhibition in St. Petersburg where they printed my works on paper, and then I had contact with the organizer, and he told me the details of the printer and how it would be printed and how he would preserve the works, and then I trusted it and I said yes to it. But so there's two sides of the story.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Спасибо.